At least that means we're starting on time.
I guess so.
All right, here we go. Welcome to episode 159 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast, recorded May 1st, 2022. My name is Ian. I'm a student preparedness and hobby farmer on Vancouver Island. Today I've been left in charge because due to the terms of our separation agreement, Eric and I have decided that only one of us can be on the podcast at once.
So are you Ian or Alan today?
Today, well, look at the makeup. Did they shave the head?
You look fantastic.
Okay.
I'm Scott, a first responder from Ontario. I like learning things and I worry about our fragile infrastructure.
And I'm Jeff. I'm based in Central Ontario. I'm a target shooter, ham radio operator, and general overall handyman.
Hello, I'm Josh. I'm in Southwestern Ontario. I'm a sport shooter, a very green hunter, prepping daydreamer, amateur beekeeper, and wannabe ham radio operator. I took the same online course as Jeff. I don't know what my excuse is for not having my license yet, but you definitely beat me there, Jeff.
There is none, so all the haters who hated on me, there's your next target.
Yeah.
Come after him. Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda. I live in Southwestern Ontario as well. I am a amateur hobby lover, so podcasting, sports shooter, beekeeper, and camper. Love sharp objects and love to learn how to make or do things on my own and enhance my skill set while still embracing my feminine side.
Sounds good. Want to help support the show and keep the Canadian Prepper Podcast on the air? Buy some swag. We have both the Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt and the tactical Velcro patch at prepperpodcast.ca. All proceeds help keep the lights on and the backup generator fueled.
And if you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and like us on Facebook and submit a review on iTunes. Also, we want your feedback, good or bad, or if there's a topic you want us to cover, you can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
Dad joke time. We have some purified content for you this episode. We're going to start off with some recent news, update our personal preps, then we'll get on to the main topic, which tonight is water revisited. So news time. At this time, guys, at this point, I don't even know where to begin anymore because there's so much stuff going on a weekly basis. How do you pare it down to one or two stories, right? It's yeah. Anyway, you guys heard about the gas getting cut off?
Yes, to Poland and Bulgaria. Yep.
Yeah. So fun fact. So I guess Russia threatened last week that if they didn't start paying in rubles, they're going to cut off the gas. Everybody's like, nah, that won't happen. Sure enough, it did. So the best part is that Poland obviously is the pipeline that provides Germany with gas as well. So basically, by cutting off Poland, you're actually cutting off Germany as well, which is the industrial hub of Europe. Has no natural gas, so no more coming in anyway. So they have they said their reserves are about 60% full. So I think they'll be fine for a few weeks yet, but then all of a sudden their I guess accumulators will run dry, and then there's a problem there too. So fun couple weeks stuff coming up ahead, I guess.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because there were. I just read the other day there were. Now of course they never named the countries, but they said there's 4 of the EU countries that apparently have agreed to pay for the gas in the rubles that the Russians want. So they're thinking maybe they went after Bulgaria and Poland because they're a bit smaller to see what the reaction is going to be from the whole EU and whether or not it scares them enough that they go Russia's way, and sort of looks like that might be happening. So.
Well, yeah, because I don't know if they can actually run a pipeline full of gas through Poland and still deliver to Germany without somebody tapping the lines in between. So it'd be very interesting to see what happens.
Oh, I thought there was a pipeline that went undersea from Russia across, and it was the second one that got canceled, but I thought there was still one running.
So Nord Stream 2 got canceled, or at least the deal fell through or whatever. I think Nord Stream 1 still runs, but I don't think it actually is enough to supply continuously Germany and crew westbound. Without having to do the augmentation through the overland pipelines. It's a small diameter relatively. So anyway, that's why they need number 2, I guess. But yeah. Anyways, other news. The Disinformation Governance Board has been formed in the States, which is, I didn't think 1984 was supposed to be an instruction manual, but hey, the Ministry of Truth exists now. So the Department of Homeland Security decided to start up something called the Disinformation Governance Board, which whatever they feel is bad information, they will censor actively and pursue who is ever sending it out. Sounds like a party.
Yes,
All I
and
gotta
of course
say
the
is,
government
wow.
gets to choose what is disinformation and what isn't. So
Yeah, that's the main problem is who chooses what's disinformation. Right?
exactly.
So anyway.
Yeah, that sort of reminds me of the situation in Russia and some of their laws about disinformation, which
Well, we
makes
have
it that much scarier.
we have stuff coming through Parliament right now too on a very similar basis, right? So with the
Yeah, the old bill C10 that they're regurgitating, and yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see how if this takes hold and spreads in the Western countries anyway.
Yep.
That'd be the end of the podcast anyway.
We don't spread any disinformation. Come on.
Well,
everything
in
we
some
say is
people's
true and
mind we do.
factual.
Yeah. Go for it.
I've got a couple articles here. They're both kind of related. So I'm sure everybody's aware of the zero COVID policy that China has. So basically, Shanghai is more or less shut right down. So residents are struggling to get basic food, basic medicine. They can't leave their place. They're going to the extent of welding gates shut at buildings, and it's bad. There's been, obviously, again, censored reports coming out of there of them not wanting stuff to get out, but rumors of people dying in their house from no food or no medicine. And they have this zero COVID policy, and the cases just continue to go outrage. So obviously their policy doesn't work, but that would be a bad thing for them if they would have to admit that it didn't work. That's why they're doing it. So,
well, I think they originally they told them to expect 4 days of lockdown, right? And then so everybody kind of went grocery shopping for 4 days, and they limited what they could buy too because they didn't want people hoarding. So,
yeah exactly. Yeah, that's why
problem.
you get it before they tell you to get 4 days. You have 4 weeks already. But so kind of on the same sort of end of it, and we've talked about this before, and so this isn't something new, and it's continuing to go on. But now they're saying, of course, because of China's zero COVID policy, that it's going to severely restrict the global supply chain, and it's going to be chaos for the summer of 2022. I believe it was you, Ian, that sent out a little thing on the podcast or on the Discord where you could see where ships were throughout the world. And so basically on the east coast of the west coast of the US, where last year there were hundreds and hundreds of ships waiting to unload and everything, there's basically nothing there. And all the ships are sitting around the side of China waiting for the ability to unload and load and bring their stuff over. So again,
well, I was going to say, go ahead, man.
Nope, that's what
I was going to say, because aviation has like flight tracker or flight aware, right, where you can monitor all the flights. Same idea. They have a maritime tracker, and you can filter out cargo ships alone, which I think ended up being green on the screen or whatever. And yeah, last year it was Long Beach that had all the backlog. Remember when the dock workers were only working 5-day weeks and 6-hour days and stuff? And so they cleared that backlog, and yeah, they've all returned now, and you can see all the green cargo ships, which normally I guess there's already, on average 150 ships waiting to go off Shanghai because that's the manufacturing base. But I guess the numbers bumped up to like 500-600 now. And because of the lockdowns, nobody's showing up to work, so they can't even handle that.
So was it any particular departments, like whether it was food or medicine or clothing, or was there any particular goods that were at risk in that mentioned at all?
Anything that says made in China.
Anything. Okay.
So everything.
Very curious.
A lot of it
packages
really
lately, and they've all been on time. So I'm very curious.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I ordered stuff from AliExpress like last week, and they showed up within a week of me ordering it, and it was supposed to be coming from China. But mind you, they do have some warehouses with prepackaged with high sales items that are like high volume stuff. So that could be part of the things. But I guess we're talking like everything from chips onwards, microchips and couches.
I was going to say that for me, I think is the big thing is the chip shortage is only going to get. You've only got a couple countries that make them, and more and more stuff needs chips. I mean, a lot of people talk about the cars and that, but it's not just the cars and that. It's washing machines, it's fridges and freezers. It's that everything needs a chip, and if you can't get a chip, you can't. You just it's not going to be there.
They can't finish their assembly, and therefore can't get the product out.
Yep. I mean, I'm sure that possibly whatever you ordered in, like you say, they may have had a warehouse somewhere, or they are still flying stuff out, but they just can't fly it fast enough. And
agreed.
So
okay. Yeah.
So I've got a news article talking about the Solomon Islands. They are a little bit northeast from Australia. Apparently there's been a lot of political turmoil there over the last 20 or 30 years. Australia has done a lot of humanitarian work, sort of trying to help settle things down. And apparently the Solomon Islands have signed a security pact with China. It sort of flew under everyone's radar, and now people are kind of freaking out because it sort of looks a little expansionistic on China's part, and while there's no talk of having a military base on the Chinese military base on the Solomon Islands, whether that's the next step, and all of a sudden it's looking kind of Cuban Missile Crisis-esque for Australia, where all of a sudden China can project a whole lot more power if they're parked on an island not that far from Australia. And so it's caused a whole lot of turmoil all over sort of the oceanic islands. And it was really interesting because a friend was telling me about this issue, and I'd heard absolutely nothing of it. And it's kind of potentially a big deal. So anyway, that's how it ended up on my radar. So I posted an article that has a lovely explanation talking about some of the backstory and why this deal, this security pact, is such a big issue.
I'm surprised you don't remember back when you were in your 20s, the last time an Asian superpower invaded the Solomon Islands and put military stuff there. We fought the Battle of Guadalcanal. And, that was a bit of a thing back then.
Oh, I think I was in my 40s then.
Oh, okay. There you go. The dimension already started set in and everything else. So, honestly, it's a strategic place because it basically allows them to cut off sea traffic between the States and Australia or Southeast Asia and Australia based on where the island chain is. And so, yeah, it's always been considered a strategic location. And, yeah, I mean, generally what happens with China is they end up putting military forces to protect whatever port facilities or whatever they end up building in some of these countries, which is done extensively in Africa. So hardly be a shocker when they've already got island bases in the Spratlys and everything else set up that they would put one there as well. So
chaos and pandemonium.
Yeah, good stuff.
So and for our listeners in Manitoba, hopefully you're not being flooded out right now.
Yeah, so is that just because the massive snow and then the massive warm up, or is that just rainfall?
There's a couple of systems of rainfall onto already saturated and or frozen ground to the point where they actually, a couple of places brought in huge amounts of clay soil that they were going to sort of build some dikes over the roads if flooding got so bad, and potentially cut off a lot of that north-south highway access going through the province. Sort of if things got bad enough, depending on if there was as much rain as had been forecasted. So,
well, hopefully we've got a couple podcasters from Patriot there that are in Manitoba area and stuff. So hopefully they're doing okay. So
yeah, and they got, especially on the American side, they got a ton of snow this year. So with the snow melt and the runoff and that, yeah. But it seems, I don't know, it just seems to me that this isn't an uncommon thing for Manitoba.
Yeah, well,
at this time of year.
Red River always floods too. So I mean, but they got means to mitigate that now. But anyway, what we done lately for preps, I guess.
I started investigating having a solar system for my roof, looking at doing net metering, possibly a battery backup on the system, just as a way of being more energy independent. Should while I'm not off grid, if the grid happens to disappear around us, I'd still like to be able to have power. So it's just interesting talking to a local company that does this stuff. So I had a really good chat with them, and we're exploring what would be involved. So
Do they allow net metering in Ontario?
yes, yeah.
Mm.
So they used to have lovely deals where they sort of paid quite handsomely per kilowatt hour because solar systems were so expensive. Those aren't really a thing anymore, but you can do net metering. So if you're feeding into the grid during sunlight hours when it's the higher cost per kilowatt hour, it sort of helps offset the cost, your capital cost putting in one of these systems. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't mind the company after the hour, after the show, if you wouldn't mind sending that to me.
Yeah, of course.
Food for thought. I know I thought about it before. I think that's really great that you're looking into solar power. And I know that they don't pay what they used to before. I have many clients who have done it for that sole purpose. But yeah, very curious as to what you're looking into, because I think being self-sufficient is very important. So please.
Well, and it's nice because the technology has really improved to the point where it's not just, we talk about our battery boxes and having the ability to sort of charge it up and run a radio, charge your cell phone, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the larger scale technology has really improved, where you can have these great big lithium batteries. You can have systems that flow in, do net metering. So I think the evolution of home solar is coming along nicely. So I'm excited to explore and see if it's something we can make worthwhile.
Wicked.
Mhm. I just did a bunch of yard work this week while the weather was good for a few days, trying to clean up from all the winter damage and down branches and you name it. And I did a bunch more firewood prep for next winter.
Cool. Speaking of water filtration and stuff, I ordered some Berkey replacement filters from Rapid Survival, of all places, if you can imagine that. And so those showed up in the mail. Did a quad oil change for what I would call the farm tractor. A little bit of fuel rotation. I'm still falling behind on that. I gotta play catch up. I got some empty jerry cans. I got Better Andrew from CPP, the original one, making me some power pole bits for the Anderson power pole plugs for those solar battery packs and stuff that we've been building. And let's see here. I guess this a couple weeks ago I did some chirp programming. That kind of fell on its face, but it took me a while to clean it up. But I kind of got all the local repeaters kind of sorted out into the radios. I had to do the kind of the seasonal stuff that I haven't touched, like the handy talkie batteries and the drone battery charges, make sure everything stays up to snuff in case of a power outage. Had to do a bit of a coop resupply for wood shavings and feed and everything else, make sure everything's topped up. Actually got a little bit of reloading done, which is way behind on that. But anyway, that was good. And for the first time, I don't know how long, I almost ran out of wood for my wood stove, which is our primary source of heat. So because we've had Mayuary already still, it's super cold out. And yeah, it's been crazy cold considering we actually had snow in April, which is unheard of out here. And so we ended up burning about, I would say probably 30% more wood this year than last year. So I'm down to my reserve stash, and that, I don't know how much longer I should need it, but anyways, yeah, but that's a big thing. So we actually, because of that April snow damage, we actually had a bunch of branches come down. So I ended up having to do a bunch of chainsawing, clearing up, and burning off the all the snow damage stuff before the burn ban kicks in, which was today. So that was all done. So we're no longer allowed big slash burns anymore because of fire hazard. Just do a quick inventory update for all the food preps and stuff, and then I again, Better Andrew from Canadian Peter podcast there. He's been a bad influence this week. I ordered a new bug out bag from Varusta Leica, the Finnish reserve.
Did you get that Dutch?
Yeah, I totally did, and I was like, yeah, because my original bug out bag is from the 1980s. Back when I was in my 30s, and so yeah, it's really old, and it's
he did apart. A good sell on it. I don't
he
blame
did.
you. Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, and it's so cheap. So I was like, yeah, I couldn't resist. So that was pretty much it for me.
I'd be curious to know what the shipping time is on that.
Well, they haven't given me a shipping. It's been 3 days since I ordered it, and they haven't given me a shipping number yet. So I mean, I figured it takes a week usually to get going, but
yeah, no, that was an awesome deal. I was contemplating that myself. I hadn't showed Amanda yet, so kind of broke the ice on that for me.
there you go. Surprisingly cheap. Surprisingly cheap.
Yeah.
Okay.
But as far as me, we're not really big preppers yet. We want to be. We think a lot about it, and we're trying. But baby steps. I tried to hunt a turkey. Been trying that since Monday was opening day. Been out 3 times, and so far I'm unsuccessful. Opening morning though, I almost got one. He was close. He was about 30 yards away, but he just would not come out of the bush, and I just couldn't get him. But the other 2 times I went, it was kind of crappy weather, so maybe they don't like the rain. I don't know.
I think Josh had the luxury last spring. He had like somebody already had a blind set up. They already had pinpointed where the roost was, and all he did was walk out. He was out there for 45 minutes. Sat behind the blind, shot it, and he had a guy come out with a 4-wheeler and a beer after the fact because it was his friend's property. So he got the ultimate treatment. This year he had to try a little bit harder. So, he had to do a little bit more of the scoping, and he made his own blind this year. So that was a different strategy. And being a green hunter, I wouldn't say that you have all the tools or accessories that maybe most hunters have.
I did make my own turkey call out of the wing bones of my last turkey, so maybe that's part of the problem. I tried to be self-sufficient, but I don't know if it sounds quite right.
Well, I don't know. You wanted a challenge this year, so I think you got the challenge. Yeah. But I will say, I think he got spoiled last year. I'll say that.
Yeah,
it's like the gateway drug for hunting when you have a really easy hunt. And it's like, oh, that's simple. I'll do that again next year. And then
that's right.
It's never that simple again.
Yeah. Well, I almost felt bad about how easy it was last year.
Really.
But well, I upgraded my cordless tools after your last episode. You kind of inspired me to walk by the Ryobis, and I entered the world of Milwaukee. So I was in Home Depot and I saw a great deal for the M18 hammer drill and impact set. So I couldn't pass that up.
Nice.
As you guys know, you've kind of, I guess Ian follows me on Strava and the CPP stuff. So I've been working on my health and fitness. We've been trying to lose weight and have more stamina. We just finished the New Shooter Canada 12-week ruck challenge. I got them all in. Unfortunately, I missed the last week. It's the only one I didn't complete on time. I felt really terrible about that, but the Rona got in the way. So, I mean, I got all the rest in there and just over 100 kilometers. So that was good. But obviously, Team Ragnaruck kicked our butts, so that was to be expected. So that wasn't really
but
it wasn't a surprise.
It was nice to know that they were listening and they were participating, and it definitely gave me a push to get started.
Yeah,
I had my own personal reasons why things didn't work out the way I did, but I was so proud of Josh for continuing up right up to week 12. So, because that's tough to do, because like he and I do a lot together.
Yeah.
And the fact that I ended up having to sit out for a while, he could have easily just walked out and said, nah.
Well, and nobody from Canadian Prepper Podcast did the challenge. So, I mean.
Well, nope, not even a little bit.
Shots fired.
No shame there, right?
So we'll see how they do with RESUL. So how's that?
Yeah, we'll see how RESUL goes.
So
I was kind of mad about the RESUL thing because normally it's in July. And,
I know it snuck right up on us, eh?
Oh, it made me mad when I saw that it was in May.
I guess we'll talk about that on upcoming events.
Yeah.
But, other than that, Amanda and I have just been trying to think hard about how we can organize our lives better and become more efficient. And we're building a shed out back to help with our long-term storage. And we're thinking about turning part of our basement into a gun room. So that's what we're kind of sketching that out and planning that right now. So
yes,
that's about it.
Absolutely. Well, I'll just continue on what we've been working on. So last year, Josh and I had started out with our first beehive, and we had a very decent harvest. Unfortunately, when we went to go check on our bees, they did not survive the winter. So, I mean, for Josh and I, that was very depressing. We thought we did really well, but then we thought about our winter strategy and how we facilitated it and what we could have done differently. So we're in the midst of trying to discuss about whether we hold off this year and get another hive next spring. I'm wondering if it's too late to order a new nuke or not. We have all the tools ready to go, so we'll see. But I mean, I really enjoyed having the hives, and during the summer, it was pretty easy to maintain. You just go and check on them every couple weeks, make sure that everything's going to plan, maybe give them a little nudge in the right direction. But I guess we'll just kind of see how things are going. We may re-strategize where we put them. I think one thing that was maybe to our disadvantage was having them at a friend's farm. It was great because they were out of everybody's way, but we couldn't keep an eye on them. And in the spring, early spring, maybe we could have caught on that maybe they weren't doing so hot with their winter harvest. So anyways, we'll time will tell. So we'll see what we're going to decide there, but we definitely want to do it again. We've also been trying to introduce our hobbies and skills to our blended family. So anybody who doesn't know us, we have 4 kids between the 2 of us. So 2 boys, 2 girls between the ages of 6 and 9. So we try and get outdoors lots, and they've really enjoyed camping, and they're really, really into YouTube survival videos. So I don't know, there's some guy from the Australia, I can't remember, but he always goes, "What's up, doggies?" And they love it. They just love it. So he always goes out and does about 24, 48 hours survival in the wild. So we wanted to kind of feed off of their interests. So we did find a children's survival course. It was held by Hazar, and it was just this past Saturday. So we learned a little bit of everything. So that's
the Huron Area Search and Rescue.
Yes. So we learned how to use a compass, first aid, importance of clean water, some essentials for exploring the wild, search and rescue strategies, a hug a tree program if you're lost, some quick shelter build ideas, as well as fire building and techniques that really got the kids engaged. So that was really fun. It was a program that was aimed for ages 5 to 12. So really great to kind of get them into it without getting too deep into it, right? So as soon as we got home, the kids right away built a tarp shelter. It's still set up in the back there. They got logs, tarp, and rope, where they just built a simple shelter. And without any assistance, they were able to start a fire without us. So that was pretty cool that they could do that all on their own.
That can be good or bad.
Yeah.
That was the thing. So they got he was working out front and going to the back and doing some cleanup outside. I was inside, and he goes, "The kids started a fire without us." And I was like, "Oh."
Yeah.
So we had to pull them in afterwards and be like, "You need to ask before you start a fire."
Just make sure they get the fire extinguisher training in hand too then.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, and like putting it out. Luckily, there's a hose right there.
And we don't have a CO detector out there. So
That's
That
right.
was going to be my next question. Did you have the CO detector?
Jeez. But it was good that they were so excited to put it out there. So I wasn't going to beat on them for that. But we definitely need to enforce some rules now. Just because they learned these things doesn't mean they can go ahead and do it without adult supervision. So,
well, it's good in case we ever decide to drop them off in the woods somewhere. Been tempted.
Isn't it tempting?
There's days where you're tempted. I get it.
Yeah.
So.
But it was really cool, though. They came home with their own first aid kits, emergency blanket, whistle, and activity books to review what they learned. So that was really cool. So a little booklet that we got about the water filtration, which I do see is kind of some of the basics that we're going to learn about today. So I'm really excited about that and kind of putting 2 and 2 together. So that was really cool. So also to go along with our introduction to our hobbies with our children, Josh and I had been pondering for a while, and we decided to buy 2 rascals. So we got a pink and a blue one to fit the boys and the girls' interests.
No, the pink one's for me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah, don't gender shame or anything. Come on now.
No, not at all. You know what? My one son totally would pick the pink one, hands down. And I think your oldest daughter, she really loves teal, so anything blue. So whatever. But it's a better fit for the children to learn the skill and to practice safeties, like proper safety when you're handling a firearm. So I tried teaching with my Ruger 1022, but it's just the stock is just way too long for them. So I think it's important to have a tool. Like we had taken them out a couple times. They've all shown interest. So it was worth the purchase. And we ended up getting it on the...
And it's funny how once they shoot a real 22, they don't want to touch the pellet guns
Oh,
anymore.
No, they don't. No, they don't. And so we're pretty excited to have those tools for them, bring them along with us so that we can go ahead and spend more time doing the things that we love and still introduce the hobby to our children with a safe firearm that has like all the specialties meant for the children. And we're hoping to mount some red dots on them for easy success. So, or good, more rapid success.
Yeah, I should point out for the listeners that may not be familiar too. So Savage Rascals, made in Lakefield, Ontario, 16-inch barrel, a single shot 22, and I think minimum legal overall length, right? Like the 26 inches. So they're super kid size, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super kid size.
Yeah, because we did the exact same thing. So I started my kids off on 1022s when they were like 6, 7, and it's too big for them, right? And so I got some cute videos of them like leaning back and trying to get the red dot all figured out, but as soon as I got the Rascal, that's when it really took off for them. So it's a fantastic little thing to learn gun safety and everything else with. So yeah, 100%. That's a great idea what you guys did there.
Yeah. Well, we also have left-handers in our group too. So like, I mean, it's already going to be a struggle teaching them to use a right-handed gun. We actually just went through an episode talking about left-handed woes, but in the meantime, why not make it a little bit more simpler for them and accommodate them so that they can better enjoy it? Because those Rascals are going to last them a lifetime, even as a young adult. They can grow into them quite well until they're probably.
Are there any tactical stocks available? We can upgrade them later on.
You can get olive drab green stocks for them. Funny enough.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
fancy.
And one thing we actually didn't even mention. So you guys are co-hosts on a podcast as well, which is called
A New Shooter Canada.
Yeah, so I just we didn't really talk about that yet. So just in case when you mentioned doing an episode, I just want to make sure people know which one they're talking about. So
yeah, I did talk a little bit about that later, so we'll go through that.
Awesome.
If you want to learn more about what it is that we enjoy talking about, but yeah, absolutely. So other than that, I guess that's been about it for our dreams for prepping and homesteading.
Well, on behalf of the panel, we hate you now because now you're making us all look bad because you guys did more for preps in the last little while than I think we have done in the last year. So, yeah, now we've been schooled.
Ian's just been riding on his laurels for years now.
Exactly. I'm like, I feel horrible. I'm a bad.
How did you run out of firewood?
There's no way we could ever catch
Ian
up.
just figures a CGN deal here or there, and he's good to go. So
yeah, it's like I didn't even mention.
I'm not even on CGN, so there you go.
Well, seriously, when we came in, I was like, so what do we do for prepping? And he goes, I said, I know what my dream thoughts are. And so I was kind of describing it. And he goes, you call that bugging in. And I was like, oh, well, what does that mean?
And you'd be surprised what really counts as prepping when you think about it. If you live on an acreage, it's everyday life. And it's amazing what you can turn into something that you see as what you've done for preps, because it is helping you be either less reliant or, I guess more self-sufficient or anything else, or even safer. It all counts, right? So, I mean, a lot of people preppers don't even realize it. Like if you get car insurance, technically you're thinking about the what ifs. So it's like,
why not?
Or even something as simple, I was talking to some friends and people about it, and I said, the one person about canning stuff, they're like, oh yeah, I can stuff all the time. Well, then guess what? You may not like it, but you're a prepper. You're preparing for you're
I'm not one of those guys.
You're preparing for, and I mean, it doesn't help that the public perception of preppers is, people with bunkers in their backyards full of guns and ammo and grenades and whatever. And you walk around with the face paint and all the ammo on your around you, but it's not. There are those people out there, trust me, but they're the fringe.
I want my canned peaches and my crate of SKS ammo. That's
in the end, the way I see it, and I was just having this conversation with my mother because she listens to the news and everything that you guys have kind of recapped, and she says to me, it's so depressing. like the world is going to be taken over by all these people and all these situations, and there's nothing we can do about it. And I said, well, no, you can't do anything about the general consensus of it, but there are things that you can do personally to help yourself in this situation. So what can you do for you? And I said, take 15 minutes out of your day, whether it's to learn a new skill. Oh, you went and grocery shopping and you picked up a few extra things on sale that you kept in storage just in case. You know what I mean? Like, do something small that helps you feel better about your situation. I as much as I want to go in, like all my money, all my situation, and go, hey, I want to be a prepper, I want to be a homesteader, and I want to do this. The reality is I don't have the abilities to do that, or I'm not mentally prepared to do that. But everybody has the opportunity to do a little bit of something. So,
that
that's
really
all
is
you
the
can
key
do.
thing is do something, do a small part every day, or once a week, or do something, and all of a sudden you'll stand there and look at it and go, hey, wait a minute, now's the time of year. I don't know where your mom lives or what her situation is, but have her have a little garden somewhere. Her own
we
vegetables,
talked about
and
that too. Yeah, so
give
that's amazing.
Give her something to do, to be out there and tending the garden, and it's fruit, especially now with the cost of food and the cost of everything that's going on. Every little bit helps.
Well, and I think peace of mind is a big part of preps too. So I mean, this is just one of those things where self-reliance is one thing, but peace of mind is another huge thing. So yeah, if it gives her a little bit of I guess less stress on listening to the daily news, it's it's a good thing, right?
Let's get her some chickens.
You honestly, well, hush now. But I mean, I totally get it. Can be very overwhelming listening to today's news and sitting there going, that is awful. Like what would, like, even looking at Russia and Ukraine in general, how, if we were put in that situation, what would we look like? And majority of the people would not be able to handle it very well. We would cope. We would find a way to survive, because that is the way humans work. But really and truly, it's been such a shake to the core. And I know my mom is really struggling with that, and I'm struggling with that. So what can we do? We don't have any control over the majority. All we can do is take care of ourselves. So what can you do to make yourself feel better about it? So I that's why I really love this whole concept, and that's why I'm really honored to be on this show. So thank you very much. So
no worries.
When I first got involved with the podcast, Ian pointed out that the first step in prepping is just getting rid of that continuity bias, right? Recognizing that things aren't always going to carry on simply because we want them to, simply because it would be convenient. We all make assumptions as a society that there's always going to be power coming from the outlet in the wall, and always going to be groceries at the grocery store. And as soon as you've shaken off some of those dangerous assumptions, you're already in a much better place. So I think that's an excellent first step. So
perfect.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the Russia thing too. Like, we lost, I think, over the course of 10 years, we lost 150 and change soldiers in Afghanistan. And that was enough to be politically, I guess, volatile to either continue or end the mission, right? 150 dead soldiers is Tuesday in Mariupol right now. So, I mean, you imagine just the absolute change in the worldview that some of these people have had lately. So, yeah, it's huge. So, but we should probably move on to the main topic since we're 40 minutes in.
Agreed.
Anyway, so this is obviously not our first crack at the water episode. We did talk about it in episode 9 back when Eric and I were just, I think, bandying back and forth, and maybe Alan had joined us by that point. But we basically just said, hey, we need water to live, right? Right, cool. All right, next episode. We didn't really cover a whole lot, so we should probably, go a little further in depth here. It's not really a cool thing to talk about. It's not tactically cool. It's not a bug out bag. It's something. But as you know, 3 days without water, that's it, right? So you guys obviously gave us this idea to talk about water again, Josh and Amanda. So we're happy you did that. And I guess right off the bat, we should probably just make sure that people realize that with water storage or preps, it's not generally a one and done thing. So if you are having to I guess, capture your own water. We should probably break it down to the first 2 steps and then talk about the other stuff later on. But first, the 2 steps being filtration, then disinfectant or disinfecting, however you want to describe it, and take it from there. So I guess step 1, filtration. So why do we want to filter it, Scott?
Well, the whole process, we're trying to deal with microbiology. That's the enemy here. Mainly bacteria, but also some viruses, some other little players. You think back to the Walkerton water crisis, where E. coli contaminated the supply and sickened a whole lot of people. It's a bacteria. It not terribly sexy, but it has fecal oral transmission, so it gets into that water supply and gets into you and makes you sick. Most local health departments will test your well water for you, and the thing they're mainly testing for is the presence of E. coli. So you know whether your well water is clean and safe and drinkable, especially depending on the home filtration system you have. So that's why it's a concern. For those of you old enough to remember playing Oregon Trail in the computer lab in school, or those of us old enough to have been on the Oregon Trail, John died of dysentery.
Which is a horrible way to go, really.
Oh, terrible, terrible. You know, and while we talk about prepping and we sort of describe, you know, this horrible Mad Max kind of world, the reality is that during a serious grid down situation, waterborne illness is going to kill way more of us than violence would.
Yeah, actually, some of the books I've been reading lately, that were recommended to me by Brad, I think, on the Discord. Yeah, they're always talking about waterborne illnesses more than anything else, and he actually focuses on that like to a larger extent than I expected. And you know, first thing I thought of filtration when I was like thinking of the 2-step process, I was thinking taste, because if you're getting like a muddy puddle water, it's going to taste like ass, so you're going to want to, like, you know, kind of make it taste better. But even on a daily basis, you know, if you're using whether that Brita filter in your kitchen or a Berkey or whatever, a lot of times you're just trying to take out that city water taste that tastes like reused city water. You know, it just tastes horrible, right? So you want to even, like, taste is a big thing.
Like they pumped it right out of the lake.
Yeah, exactly. Or like they might have just recycled that water and reused it and just kind of ran it through the treatment plant or whatever, right? So yeah, like, I mean, in order to stay hydrated for your ruck challenge, or, you know, in a grid down situation where you're going to be like exerting yourself, you're going to want to take in the water, but if it tastes like ass, you're not going to want to drink it. So that's a problem too, right? And then if it isn't filtered properly, you know, you might even have chemicals in it. If you're, you know, sucking out of a stream and you're downstream from a plant that's shut down, or people that are dumping crap in there, like they're dumping their water soluble paint in there because they just figure it's a good idea to get rid of it. You know, dilution's the solution to pollution or something like that. So you never know what's in that water, right? Like, I mean, upstream from you. So it's kind of a bigger deal than most people give it credit for, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's such an important thing. It is one of the major. Yeah, we talked about it in episode 9 because it's such a big thing, and then we've kind of ignored it for.
Well, yeah, and I was actually surprised about that. It had actually been that long ago. So I guess the most people, when they think of water filtration right now in everyday life, they're thinking about the boss level filtration system, which is the reverse osmosis filter, which, you know, is awesome. Most houses that, you know, have like a dedication to water processes, like if you're dealing off a crappy well water, or if you're just ultra anal about it, they'll have this massive filter system set up in your basement, and it goes through the filter verse that hits the UV filter, which is like, yeah, it works great. It gives you nice clean water, but it actually requires external pressurization. So either from the city lines, or might require a water pump on your acreage to run it properly. So that's obviously not going to work long term, right? If something goes grid down, or interruption of service, or even just like brownouts or anything else, right? So you got to kind of work around that a bit.
Well, and you think back to, you know, camping when water filters were the old lever action screws on top of an Nalgene. Like that's what the most popular water filters were. And you went out camping, and everyone ended up horribly dehydrated because like there was so much work involved to get water. Whereas now, when you have sort of the gravity fed systems filtering for you, you have lots of water. So looking at that difference between water being a big pain pain in the butt and a very limited commodity versus nowadays when the technology is improved and it's a whole lot easier. If we sort of take that mindset and apply it to our home lives in a big, ugly grid down situation, are we going to be in a situation where water is manageable?
Yeah, and so like you mentioned the Catadine filter, those type of things, it's like, yeah, they work awesome, they really do. But they're super expensive, and they are more portable than other systems. But yeah, like you said, you're gonna want to sit there and pump water constantly to keep yourself hydrated. You want to just like work smart, not hard, and use something like the Berkey, right? So, Berkeys, have you guys had any experience with them?
I have not.
No.
No.
Okay. So basically, if you imagine just like two steel, and well, depending on the size that you buy, like you actually buy it based on the amount of holes in the bottom of the Berkey filter, so you can put more filters in, so it actually filters water faster. But imagine like a steel 5-gallon bucket on top of another steel 5-gallon bucket, and based on the amount of holes is the amount of water per hour it can filter. But it works just strictly on gravity, so it's designed for the third world. This is kind of like your I guess your prepper gold standard filter. So it's no electricity required. It works strictly by gravity. You just throw water in the top hopper. It goes through these filters just on a seepage basis, and the filters are basically made out of like burnt coconut husk that's compressed. So imagine like hamster shavings, but coconut husks that are kind of charcoaled up, and that's exactly what they're made out of. And so yeah, they work really well. They're super pricey, but they last forever.
So what, like 3 or 4 gallons, or how much at a time?
Well, so yeah, I got the Royal Berkey. I think it's got 6 holes in the bottom. Anyway, I don't know. They have all these crazy names for them.
The Royal, that sounds fancy.
Yeah, like there's the Crown, the Royal, the whatever. I'm gonna talk about another one later
Royal.
on. Yeah, ooh, not that type of filter. So yeah. Anyways, basically you just throw the water on top, and actually it'll take anything you want. You could actually do something what they call the food dye test. You could actually like put red food dye or any color food dye you want in the water, throw it in the Berkey, it'll come out clean out of the bottom. So it filters out dirt, viruses, bacteria, absolutely everything. And as a matter of fact, if you have chlorine in your city water and you're using it in the city, you can actually get an extra piece that goes underneath the filters that removes the chlorine after it's been filtered. So you can avoid that atrazine in the water, take away the Alex Jones content, which is, he's worried about the frogs going gay and everything else. I get that. But it's a long urban myth with him. So anyways, but yeah, no, they work really well, but they are not cheap. So, you might have to spend $200 on filters, but they will last, hundreds of thousands of gallons, because you can actually like scrub them as you go along, clean them up again, and then they last a long time. So I think I gotta count now, 12 years we've had the Berkey. This is our third set of filters, but we use it for absolutely everything, and it makes everything taste better. So,
have you ever tested your water through the Berkey to see if it works, or do you just do the taste test?
Taste test right off the bat, but we had our water testing. So when we moved here back in 2013, we did a well test, and already the water was fine. Like the guy wanted our water basically because it was like filtered through granite to begin with. The only thing we have is a little bit of mineral content to deal with, and so it just filters that out. So I end up getting a mineral scale on top of the filters. I just toothbrush that off, and it's good to go. But yeah, no, it does taste way better, and it's obviously no problem. So we don't use any sort of UV system or bleach or anything else like that. We'll talk about. So now basically with the Berkey filters, when you buy those things, you're paying for the filters for the most part, but you're also paying for that stainless steel bucket. So if you don't want to do that, you can actually just get a couple of Home Depot buckets and buy the filters and still kind of make your own. So I threw a YouTube link in the show notes there that I'll put up on the YouTube channel. And yeah, it's actually not that hard to make. So that's a thought right off the bat. So
does Berkey make like a sport bottle version, like where you could just?
They do. So I was going to make a joke about it later on, but this is a good time as any. So they actually make a little Berkey Sport, it's called, and it's a blue water bottle, and it's got a straw that goes through the top, and in the bottom of the straw, it's got like a little mini black filter that's the same material that's in the big Berkeys, and it's relatively cheap. I think it's $15 for the filter or something. But if you imagine trying to suck through an empty balloon, that's what you're dealing with when you're doing the
it's not that bad.
It's tougher than you would think, anyways. And the problem is that it works. And if you for a bug out bag or something like that, absolutely, sure, it would work for sure. But on an everyday usage, I have one. I just ended up not using as much as I thought. So
Okay.
I'm not using it that much either. It's more I've got it more for the shit hit the fan scenario stuff. You know, I end up stranded somewhere and I've got to get home or whatever. I know that I can take that and filter some water, you know, while I'm out in the middle of nowhere somewhere or whatever. It's not intended for just using it here in the house. I've got filters for that. So
yeah, it does actually take out viruses and stuff without bleach, which is good. So that's a good thing. But if you don't want to do a Berkey and you just want to have something on standby for a shit hit the fan situation or just a grid down long term, whatever, you can actually make a 3-bucket system, which basically has if you imagine gravel on top, sand below that, leaking into a second bucket, which will give you a run through charcoal, activated charcoal, as Jeff was about to talk about, and then a third bucket just collects the clean water at the bottom. And again, video in there. It's used throughout Africa because it's just cheap. It might take about $5 worth of materials to make, and then you just go up and collect your sand and rocks from a creek side. So it works. I mean, it's just it's a matter of getting that. But then, of course, you have to treat it afterwards. But we'll talk about that later. And,
yeah. So on that topic, Ian just mentioned, the only thing I wanted to mention, just to make sure that everybody's clear, when they say charcoal, they're not talking about charcoal from your fire pit or your wood stove or whatever. It is activated charcoal, and it has to be activated charcoal. Using that charcoal from your stove or that whatever will probably kill you if it doesn't make you incredibly sick. You can make your own activated charcoal. There's YouTube videos out there how to do it. It's a little time consuming and tedious, but if you have to, you can make your own activated charcoal, but just make sure that's what you're using. You're not just using normal charcoal.
Although I heard charcoal is a good detoxifier if you have poisoning or something, you have a little bit of like fireplace charcoal in a pill and then run it down like a little tiny bit will actually help. But I don't have anything.
No, actually, the hospitals and that they use activated charcoal a lot for poisoning and that kind of stuff, and they'll have the like sometimes drug overdoses and that they'll have the people actually drink they'll have a watered down drink of activated charcoal that will, as you say, detoxify or quite lessen the effects of whatever it is that you've taken.
And makes a heck of a mess.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd imagine it's probably on the back end too. It's probably not overly thrilling to deal with the after effects of drinking something like that. So, yeah.
I'm just going to point out in the chat, James mentions all the British royal residences use Berkeys.
Well, there you go.
Wow.
Maybe they're trying to keep that atrazine out or something like that. And actually, Ryan brings up a really good point. The Berkeys will not filter out salty water, so they're not desalinators by any means. There's actually 3M, I think it is, makes a desalinization membrane to take salt water, turn it into fresh water, but it requires pressure and power, so that's a thing. But if you're going to deal with salt water, there's always like the evaporation method, like distillation, or you could, there's a few ways to do it, but it's not overly easy. So
no, I mean it's more, if you're desalinating, it's much more of a survival situation because you're in a raft in the ocean.
Well, and like he said, saline plugs the filter. Well, yeah, I'll say, because I take a 5-gallon bucket of salt water out here from the bay, just down at the bottom of the road, and I can literally get about about a pound of salt out of 5 gallons of water, like by just evaporating it off of a wood stove. So if I start a wood fire outside, in a covered area, and just boil off the salt water, I'll end up with a bunch of sea salt, like you wouldn't believe, real fast. So. But it's just not cost effective right now. But if I ever needed salt, it's a thing. Anyway, and I think this is James. This looks infected. Charcoal dose very little in modern overdoses. We've almost stopped using it. So there you go.
Okay.
There you go. Anyway, I'll defer to his knowledge for sure on that one. So a couple other things about filters. If you don't want to spend money on a Berkey and you don't want to spend time building the 3-bucket system or anything else, even like a couple big water barrel systems, you can do the same idea with a bunch of sand and gravel. If you want to just take the big large diameter stuff out, there's a couple of things you can have around the house. So I think a lot of people have these things, which is like a tea strainer. So these tea strainers are stainless steel, laser cut, super tiny holes in them. They will filter out an amazingly large amount of things. So if you want to take some large items out, that's a good way to pre-filter your water, but even before you run into a Berkey if you had to. Coffee filters with your coffee hopper might taste like garbage afterwards, but it'll work if you haven't cleaned up your coffee hopper in a while. The other thing I was showing the guys on the Discord too is like some of these teas nowadays come with these plastic tea bags. I'm just gonna check my camera here to make sure I can see it. So nowadays these tea bags come in plastic and they're like a fine mesh. And if you actually take a bunch of those and put them at the bottom of those bucket systems, it'll keep the sand from going into the next level. So if you want to keep the sand from leaking down into the charcoal, whatever, that's a good way to do that. Darius mentioned using cheesecloth as kind of a pre-filter system as well. But honestly, even if you just have a Brita around and you want to just take out the large chunkies out of your water before you try and deal with it afterwards, that's a good way to start. Anybody else have anything to add?
I love the Gravity Works system that I have, where it's a platypus bag of dirty water going through a filter into your clean platypus bag, and to backwash, you basically just reverse it so the clean water goes back through the filter, and it's amazing how much particulate and stuff you see going back into the dirty bag, like when it's that concentrated goop.
Oh yeah, that first little bit of backwash, it's terrifying actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people are drinking that stuff just straight and then wondering why they get ill too. So with the Platypus filter, is that actually the name brand of the filter, or does it like got a Sawyer Mini on it, or was it got on it?
It's Platypus bags. I think the brand is Gravity Works, but I'll have to look it up and find that for you in a minute.
Okay, cool. Disinfection time. I think
well, you should see a doctor about that then.
Yeah. Maybe I should see a doctor about that time. Okay, so yeah, why are we disinfecting? Obviously, Scott covered this before, mainly so you don't die. But yeah, we actually have our own little Canadian history moment here. We have Giardia we're worried about, which is beaver fever. Beaver fever got its name from a group of guests who arrived at the Banff Springs Hotel back in the 1800s and decided to drink from a stream that was full of beavers that were crapping in the water, and they got sick and died. So people thought it was just a fever back in the day. They didn't realize what was going on, but that's actually, yeah, it was obviously I guess a bacterial infection, which causes diarrhea. Dysentery, same idea, Scott. That's just excessive diarrhea too, right?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's an amoebic dysentery or cholera, or like we talked about this a little offline. It doesn't really matter what's killing you by giving you diarrhea and dehydration. Whether it's E. coli or cholera, like the causative agent isn't really the concern. The filtering and the disinfection we're aiming to kill off any of these potential villains, so that we have clean, healthy water at the end of the process. So, in theory, whatever we're doing for one should work for sort of all of these common issues, or common bacteria, microbiological agents, whatever.
Yeah, and I guess the reason we're mentioning disinfection after filtration is because any method you use for water is going to be way less effective in dirty water than it is in clean water, right? So if it's sitting there swimming with fecal matter and everything else, so they're clearly adding a couple drops of bleach isn't going to do anything to it, right?
Well, yeah, if there's still tadpoles swimming in it, you want to filter that out so you have the cleanest water possible. Because when you look at the, sort of jumping down in the notes a bit, if we're disinfecting the water with bleach, it really doesn't take a huge amount. But that's because you're presuming you're doing already filtered, fairly clean water. If all of your disinfecting agent is going into the silt that's in your water because you haven't filtered it, you're really no better off.
Yeah. Quick question from Chris. How do you treat rainwater? Well, treat it gently for one. No, it's I guess you can't filter it and collect at the same time, because anything used for collection of rainwater is going to be a problem. The fact that you're never going to keep the rain barrels on the inside perfectly clean to keep it as potable water. So generally what I try and look at it as a strategy is to collect the rainwater in a container that's going to get moldy or algae covered or get pollen in it or whatever because of what's on the roof. Right now we're getting pollen in our rainwater collection barrels. But then you take
Or
the rainwater,
bird poop on your roof.
bird
Yeah.
poop on the roof, same thing. Yeah. So obviously treating rainwater in a one-step process is not going to work. I'd collect the rainwater, then move it to the filtration system, then move it to the disinfection system. Got to keep them separate. So that's I just treat rainwater like any other water. Just deal with it on a step-by-step process. Yeah. So I guess the first way to disinfect, bleach. It's an ongoing prepper thing as well. Couple things, major notes: unscented bleach only. Don't get the fresh scent or the jasmine scented bleach. Extra stuff you don't need, chemical wise, and or stuff to filter out. So just regular cheap unscented bleach will work.
What about a Tide Pod?
Well, there's a challenge involved with that. I think if you want to talk about the detoxification part that we mentioned about 10 minutes ago, yeah, we won't be able to help you at that point. I think that's a Darwin Award thing. Yeah, so bleach only. So, and don't drink bleach. Don't drink bleach, please. There is a couple of steps here as well. So back to Hughes's from the podcast here. He had HFX Prepper was his old channel name. He forgot to mention it last week, but his new channel name is Sigma Ranch. He's got a great video on how to make bleach from pool shock, which is a thing. So if you pool shock lasts forever in a concentrated powder form, it's very cheap to buy relatively to buying a bottle of bleach, but you just have to turn it from that powdered form into liquid. And once you've made bleach out of pool shock or just bought bleach from the store, bleach only lasts about a year or two before it starts losing its efficacy. So then all these recipes kind of go out the window. So general rule, and I'm going to get corrected here in about 3 seconds, I'm sure, but 2 drops per liter of bleach. If that's assuming it's 5% concentration, which is your standard bleach concentration. 5 gallons, use half a teaspoon if you want to use it in imperial form or whatever. Again, through another YouTube video in the show notes here, because if you can barely smell it, that's the ideal. If it smells strongly bleach, don't drink it. Boy Scout camp, I think in the Boy Scout manual, I think they used to make what they call a stock solution. So they take like hardcore bleach, filter it down to about, maybe a 1% solution, and then they use that to do water so kids didn't accidentally drink it or anything else that we were talking about before the show. But it's just an extra step you don't need to take if you don't want to. So, anybody else have any questions on how to disinfect with bleach?
No, let's move on.
All right, cool. Iodine is another old school way of doing the disinfection part. Now, I think Scott can probably attest as well. Back when you had to deal with that on other side gigs that you may or may not do for a living, iodine is gross stuff. It really is. It's it makes the water look like weak tea. It smells weird. It tastes weird, but it does the job. So it's a good topical anesthetic. Iodine can look like this is betadine, which is like a topical anesthetic or antiseptic, should I say? And this is something I bought in Zehrs stores in Ontario, which was like a 25 mil, I think, of iodine. It cost me a fortune. I think back in the day it was like $5 or something. It's probably double that now. So I'm sure you can get it cheaper somewhere else, but at the time I didn't know any better, so I just bought this. But it's 2% tincture of iodine, so generally 5 drops of 2% tincture to each liter of water, and that should disinfect it. But it's also going to change the taste. And so a lot of these water tabs that you'll buy in like the Coughlin's setup and everything else, they're all like basically just iodine tablets, and then they have a second pill to add to get rid of the iodine taste because it tastes so bad. So that is one way to do it for sure. The only thing with that, just like bleach, you probably want to let both of them stand for about 30 minutes before you actually drink it. So unlike the FDE filter or the Berkey, you kind of got to wait.
Yeah, takes time to kill off all of the nasties.
Yeah. And so, like you said, it does have a secondary purpose, though, for preparedness, and the fact that you can take iodine, make a topical disinfection solution. So if you have to like sterilize anything or like clean out wounds or anything else, that's a thing. This Zehrs bottle that I bought actually has potassium iodide in it as well. So if you are worried about radiation from a nuke plant going off or whatever, and you can't get your KI pills, this has KI in it. So that's
so does the iodine last longer than bleach then?
As far as I know, it doesn't seem to go bad that I know of. I haven't seen anything talk about that, but I mean, maybe it does. These things are like 10 years old, so maybe they're no good. I also not a big fan of using them, so
I don't know for sure, but some of it's elemental iodine, so it really can't sort of break down if it's in a stable, sort of chemically stable environment, versus bleach and pool shock is all sodium hypochlorite. So if chemically that starts breaking down, if you're already elemental, there's not much smaller you can break down, right?
yeah. And last little trip to use. This is in like my my suitcase for when I'm on the road. Aqua Tabs. So better than iodine, more of a chlorine-based kind of like sterilization system, and it's got the instructions right on the back. So they made it Ian-proof. It's perfect. And so yeah, basically a couple tablets would go in a liter of water. This one's actually 1 tab per 2 liters because it's a higher strength stuff. But you can get like 40 tablets for like $10. It's pretty cheap.
Expiry date on those?
Not that I see. It doesn't like normally when you get something like that has it does have an expiry date on it. Stand by. This is going to be embarrassing. Let's see here. Oh yeah, they're expired. No,
Is
actually,
it best before or an actual expiry date?
it says expires, and it expired in 2019, so they're probably no good. But I'll keep them because something's better than nothing.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if push comes to shove, they may well work.
Yeah, but I guess it's time for me to go get some new ones. Anyway, so I just learned something.
Where do you get them?
Those ones I think I got at
Rapid Survival.
No, I got these at Canadian Tire. I think it was under the camping section. They had Aqua Tabs.
Okay.
But that was in Barrie, just so you know. So just throwing it out there. Anyway, the other thing, the SteriPen. So a couple of my friends had these things. Now they are, I don't know if they're snake oil or not, but they seem with the same thing with the reverse osmosis filter. They have a UV stage as well. SteriPens are basically AA batteries hooked up to a UV light that you basically shove in a glass of water, squeeze the handle, and you're good for about, I think after 30 seconds, I think it says the water's safe to drink. I have no idea to prove how that works or not.
A lot of home systems have a UV element where the water's passing over a very bright UVC spectrum bulb to kill off everything. And I mean, it's a flowing system. We used to have one at our old place. So if they've managed to make one small enough that you can sort of do a glass at a time, makes sense.
Yeah. So like the SteriPen seems to make sense, but again, if you're only doing a glass at a time, that's a bit of a problem. You can probably roll through your AA batteries real fast doing that. So maybe for a bug out bag or a short-term thing, maybe I could see that. Anyway, the other thing I just want to talk about that I've seen it mentioned a couple times. I don't know what to make of it, but so say if you have a big barrel of water down in your basement and you just want to store water long term, obviously the water is going to taste like stale after a while, and you can reoxygenate it, you can shake it, and it seems to make it better. But these people are selling an aerobic stabilized oxygen water preserver, which definitely sounds like snake oil. But it's basically you're supposed to add a couple drops of this to a barrel of water, and it's supposed to make it stay tasting good. I don't know, but it's a thought. Yeah. Oh, James mentions if you rainwater is typically fine if clean caught. If the catch mechanism, like your roof, typically bird droppings in the downspout that are the issue. So if you clean catch in pots or a tarp, just drink. Yeah, if you had a clean tarp and you're in a rainstorm,
yeah,
this is a problem. If you had the tarp sitting there for 6 weeks and it's got pine needles and bird poop and squirrel effluent or whatever on it, yeah, that's probably a problem.
Well, then it's no better than your roof.
Yeah, exactly. So
rather be safe than sorry. So
yeah, I like the pots idea. You've got a pot in the house, just take it outside and set it. Let the rain fall in it, and it's clean. You've cleaned it, and
I believe Brendan Gleeson held a clinic on that, and 28 days later, on top of his apartment building roof, he had like 50,000 pots up on the roof collecting rainwater. So
exactly what I was picturing.
that was pretty good. And I also threw in a handy PDF link for the Environmental Protection Agency, of all things, talking about disinfection of drinking water. And they have everything from bleach to iodine to so on and so on. It's just a handy PDF. It's 2 pages. You can print it off. And it kind of gives you the Coles notes on everything I just mentioned. So now, assuming that you have none of those things and Xeris has closed and Canadian Tire is not selling Aqua Tabs anymore, I guess there's always boiling. Now, back when Scott and I were growing up in the 1920s, it was we were told to boil it for 10 minutes, which I never really thought made sense, because if you boil stuff for 10 minutes, you're probably going to lose half the water to evaporation. Turns out that basically the CDC and the EPA both agree that if you bring it up to the boil, even a minute is more than sufficient. Matter of fact, even if you bring it up to boiling temperature, that's good enough. But they say a minute is like basically overkill at that point. That should be good enough, because I guess once you get up to that boiling temperature, most eggs of parasites and or bacteria is instantly pretty much killed at that temperature. So that's just something to think about.
A little further back in the chat, James pointed out that certain pathogens, Giardia being one of them, are a little harder to kill with boiling. So sometimes it does take longer. E. coli being one of the more common ones that we're trying to deal with, sort of being the more common pathogen in this situation. He suggested a rolling boil for 5 minutes.
There you go. Now they're still going to argue about it. And I guess, so if you don't have any heat by this point, why didn't you get a wood stove? Because we've been talking about those forever too. So there's also the Princess Auto outdoor stove. Worst case scenario, you have to boil water. That's like $58, I think. And it goes on. It's been having supply chain issues as well, but it's usually in a Princess Auto. It's a little round thing. It's meant for outdoor usage. And yeah, you can always boil water with that. So the last one I wanted to mention, and again, I'll probably catch heat from James on this one too. It's a CDC and a World Health Organization method that's approved, assuming the water is not dirty. Now it's called the Sodis, or solar distillation method. It basically involves a 2-liter pop bottle and the sun. So you fill the pre-filtered water, not murky or turbid water or anything else, just clean water into a bottle, throw it up on your roof in direct sunlight, and as long as you've left it up there for, I think it says anywhere, depending on the latitude that you're at, it says up to 12 hours is fine, but less if you're in Africa, stuff like that. And basically the heat and the UV from the sun will kill most bugs that are going to cause problems in that water just by being directly exposed to the sunlight, as long as the plastic bottle is clear, not opaque. So that's the cheapest way I can think to do it. That's everything.
No, sounds good.
All right, cool. Does anybody else have any stuff they want to talk about before we move on to the Lifestraw and Sawyer thing that I was going to make fun of Eric with?
No, I just was kind of going to say, I put it down a little bit further, but I can bring it up now. It doesn't matter. Thinking more along the, like I say, the crap hits the fan scenario, or your vehicle breaks down or something, you've got to get home, you're walking. Know your source of water. Moving streams are better than stagnant ponds. Of course, that being said, I mean, if you're at the bottom of a hill and there's a little stream running down there and it looks clean, and you put it in your jar or your glass and you drink it, and you go on your merry way and you get to the top of a hill and realize you're downstream from a dairy farm, that's not going to work out very well for you. So, try to know your water source as best you can.
Well, it's true, because I mean, like Lake Simcoe, for example, has the infestation of zebra mussels, which makes the water delightfully clear. But the problem is then you get downstream to a place like the Holland Marsh when you're crossing the 400 there, and that's like agricultural runoff central, and you're going to have manure problems and fertilizer issues, everything else. And same thing if you're downstream from the steel mill in Hamilton. There's going to be some nasties in the water. So yeah, for sure, just give a second thought to your water source as well. That's definitely a thing.
I did enjoy Mike's story of filling his water and then 500 meters later finding the giant dead bloated elk in upstream.
Yeah.
That's true. So let's see here. So James mentioned Sodis is super great and sustainable. Remember though, studies are all done in African sun. Like I said, it depends on the latitude. So a lot of times they'll mention that, yeah, it's good after 12 hours. Well, maybe that is the case if it's in deepest, darkest Africa during the middle of summer. So you might want to be a little extra conservative on our end, especially if it's in like a place like Calgary, and you're having to do it in your kitchen window. It's not going to work nearly as well. It might take days to make the same effect. I would just go with boiling at that point. But anyway, but it's good for people with like low income areas, or like if you're running out of supplies and all you have is bottles you found on the side of the road. It is a thing. So okay, so I've been ragging on Eric for like 159 episodes about Lifestraws. So I tried my best to actually say nice, positive things about Lifestraws here, and he didn't show up for the episode. So I'll do it anyway. But anyway, so the big thing with preppers is two portable water systems that guys talk about a lot: Sawyers and Lifestraws. So they both have the positives and negatives, and I just thought we'd talk about them briefly, because other than just ragging on Eric, which is always fun, but we haven't really gone into what the deal is. So Lifestraw is, first off, cheaper than a Sawyer, which is great. $20 seems to be the going rate, depends on where you get them and who from, but they're everywhere. So even Cabelas has them in a big bin as you walk in. Canadian Tire carries them. I think my sister-in-law got me a pair of Lifestraws for her Christmas gift, which I had to giggle about. I sent Eric a picture right off the bat, and yeah, so they are super easy to use. Like literally, all you gotta do is
one of the friends of mine he buys bottled water from the Water Depot. I don't know if you've heard the company, and apparently they sell Lifestraws in their stores.
Yeah. And so like super easy to use. Like literally you got to do is just stick it in the water and suck. Okay. It doesn't get easier than that, right? Less prone to freezing because generally there's not water sitting in the filter. So yeah, pretty good. And you can, for $20 a pop, you can throw it in the bug out bag. You can throw one in the car. You can throw one in your desk if you need to, or whatever. Negatives with the Lifestraws. Yeah, they're, like I said, they're maybe a little bit longer than a pen, about an inch across, and basically just have like a sippy cup end on one end, and then you just stick the other end through the membrane in the water. The negatives, if you are sitting there in a bug out situation or an off-grid situation, you have to bend over the puddle that you're drinking from and just start sucking. So your only option really is on demand, unless you have like some sort of an open cup you can pour the water in, carry it around, and then when you want to, you can suck it out of that cup or whatever. But if you have to wait till you come across a water source before you actually suck it through the filter, it has to filter and disinfect at once. So that's a bit of a problem as well. So it's not going to be nearly as good, because if the water is really, really turbid or really, really disease ridden, then it might not do as good of a job. I don't think the micron count is as good as the Sawyer. The other thing is with the Lifestraw is they're meant to be like a one and done, or like kind of a disposable item, more so than the Sawyer. You can't backwash them at all. So the nice thing about the Sawyer is that you can extend the life by backwashing them, or Gravity Works Platypus thing. You can backwash them anyway. So obviously a much shorter filter life than the Sawyer, and even I think their advertisement is only like 1,000 gallons or something like that tops, which I think is in the most, I guess, ideal situation possible versus like swamp water.
Pretty clean water to start with.
Yeah. So the Sawyer, they come in a bunch of different sizes, but a lot of people focus on the Sawyer Mini, which there's a micro, there's a Sawyer Max. I don't know what the big one's called anyways, but the Sawyer Mini is the one that everybody uses. They're about $32 a piece. They were anyways. I have no idea what they go for now. Positives with those things, they can be used inline in a hydration pack, like that Platypus thing. So if you have like a backpack with a hydration pack in it that has a line out that you normally would suck through, you could put it inline in that and just carry on, and yeah, works great. You could do the IV drip formation where you have like a bottle of water. It has a nice attachment on the Sawyer Mini that basically has common threading for 2-liter pop bottles and stuff. You could hang a 2-liter pop bottle upside down full of dirty water, set up as an IV drip through the Sawyer, and have it emptying into something below it, gravity fed. Works great, like a mini Berkey. So for the size and weight of it, it's way more effective, does a better job, higher filter efficacy, and I think it's rated for 100,000 gallons. So again, perfect situation, but like a lot longer life than Lifestraw.
Yeah, so Lifestraw is really just basically your last resort. Throw it in your bag just in case.
Yeah, the ideal, like if you're trying to stay dry and you have to bend over the edge of a
Right.
creek and you're getting your chest wet because you need to suck water out of a stream, that doesn't really appeal to me at all.
Yeah.
The nice thing about the Sawyer too, before it goes, shoving water into your mouth, you have the option, if you do that IV drip formation or whatever, you have the option to throw a couple drops of bleach in that water just to make sure before you shove it down your gullet. So that's a good thing.
Mhm.
Somebody had something there? No. Okay. Negatives for the Sawyer, they are pricier, so almost double the cost of a Lifestraw, and I have no idea what the new price is lately. They are very much harder to find. So the only place I was able to find them in Canada was on Amazon, or I don't even think Rapid Survival carries them, do they? But I don't even think Bryden carries them or anybody else. But down in the States, I think even Walmart sells them. Like they're everywhere down in the States if you can get across the border on a shopping trip or wherever. A little more finicky, so yeah, you have to practice using them. Maybe get some PVC piping to do that IV drip thing, or if you can actually use it as a squeeze technique where you actually fill up the pre-supplied bag that comes with the filter, squeeze it through the filter into another hose into like your drinking bottle. So you have to actually like test your gear and give it a try, because the innards of the Sawyer is a much tighter weave than the Lifestraw, which is almost just like a Lifestraw looks like I guess a bunch of hair hanging down, whereas the inside of a Sawyer looks more like highly compressed cotton. So you can imagine that the Sawyer is going to freeze up, mold up, and have more problems by sitting. So if you use it, you have to make sure it's dry before you put it away. And if you are putting one in a bag, there's like yellow pipe caps that are PVC tubing caps. I think they're 3/8 of an inch, and they go right on the ends, so you can just keep it dry by doing that. So there's that. That's pretty much it. I mentioned the Berkey Sport before, but I said it was for hipsters, but it does work. So, and I do have one, so I guess I don't know what that makes me, but yeah.
Want
So
to be
the
a hipster?
yeah, exactly. Gotta get a neck
Well, I
beard.
guess I'm a hipster without knowing it. So
Yeah, I gotta get a neck
There you
beard
go.
or something. But the other thing I was gonna mention too. So if all this fails, Imodium, you should probably have some in your preps, because dysentery is a horrible way to go. And I'm not saying keeping it in is a good idea. That your body wants to get it out of you for a reason. But yeah, Imodium, just if you need to travel or if you need to do something that requires you not running to the bathroom every 13 seconds, maybe it's not a bad idea to have it in your preps. Scott's going to tell me I'm wrong. But anyways, somebody else mentioned Pepto-Bismol. So that's a good idea.
Yeah, so someone smarter than me said start with Pepto-Bismol.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. I mean, like, I'm clearly wrong on that. But I mean, again, but it might even be a barter item. You never know, right? If somebody else has like drank the swamp water and needs to stop the process, it's like you'd always trade it for something else, right?
Yeah.
I for when I'm traveling, actually, I have Imodium with me just in case I need to get home. So I gotta make it through like a 5-hour trip or something, and then I can just get home and then deal with it when I get home. Just like sometimes you just gotta do that, right? So,
Yeah.
anyways, but that's pretty much all I had for water this time. You guys have anything else? Did I not cover any questions there, Josh?
You pretty much knocked out everything I had listed. I think you did a great job. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
As far as test kits that you guys were asking about, I don't know.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like with the red dye, you mentioned that, but I guess
Yeah.
it's just afterwards. Like that UV method kind of made me a little nervous, right? It's like, how do you know if that really worked? And you're kind of rolling the dice on that a little bit.
Well, I guess we just want to read it and see what they have to say, and then see if it works for you. Maybe it's just like, if you live in a cloudy area that's cloudy all the time or cold, it's not going to work at all.
Right.
But same time, the test kits, like when I mentioned the red food dye or just running that through the Berkey, that's just to see the efficacy of the filter. That doesn't tell you if there's anything in there.
Sure.
Scott, would you know of any sort of test kits to be able to tell if there's a?
I mean, the public health around here, you can take them a sample of your well water and they'll test for E. coli. I don't know if there are any. When I can picture that test section at Home Depot where you can get, the radon tests and whatever. I'm not sure if they have water tests in there. I think a lot of them, you typically take a sample and send it away to a lab for testing at the lab.
Yeah, it's not like a blood sugar thing where you're testing for diabetes and you get a
Sure.
urine sample and you
Yeah,
go,
I'm just picturing like putting a powder in the bottle, shaking it up, and if it turns color, you're good or whatever, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's one of those things where like yeah, you have to kind of go with what's tried and true and what you know works. And yeah, that's it. I mean, we've all kind of drank from that stream once in a while. You know, if you're in the middle of nowhere thinking it's good, but yeah,
And some of us have regretted that.
Yeah, some of us regretted that for sure. So,
people tend to freak out about water, especially early on. There was a interesting case study in Boston where this old, like circa Boston Tea Party clay tunnel collapsed. The water supply was safe, but all murky, and everyone freaked out. There's a boil water advisory. There was no bacterial contamination, but because it was cloudy and the flavor was different all of a sudden, and apparently people were showing up at the hospitals. They're fighting over bottled water in the supermarkets, even though it was actually still pretty good water. It wasn't quite up to the standards we expect in the first world, but compared to other parts of the world, it was just fine. I mean, I think we've reported enough news stories just on this podcast about sort of water contamination issues going on. So I think it's certainly worth having that skill set, right?
Well, yeah, because I think a lot of these substandard sources that these cities are getting their stuff from, like for example, when I lived in Barrie, they had 5 underground aquifers they were drawing from, so that's fine. But there's a lot of times where, like up in Courtenay, just north of on the island here, they draw it out of a swamp, and so yeah, it's kind of skunky to begin with. So unless they chlorinate the crap out of it, it's going to be bad. So when they give you the boil water advisory, which they do a lot up there in heavy rainfall, you got to boil it. You got to take care of it because it's not going to be good. Around here, they dump raw sewage in the ocean constantly, daily, from Vancouver and Victoria, but we're not drinking from there, so that's good. But there are places like, I guess, Lake Ontario, where if there's a power outage or a storm surge or something, they will occasionally dump raw sewage in there, and then they turn around and have a big pipeline going from Lake Ontario back into Milton. So there is a problem there too, right? So if the water treatment plant is offline, then that is a situation, even in the first world.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting around here, the water source for us is sort of this one big lake. So there's extra regulations to protect that water supply. And then the sewage goes into a different lake. So it's nice
all good.
But I mean, it's really interesting when you look at some of the like old timey villages, especially on rivers, the water intake was upstream, the sewage output was downstream, but they would had situations where they're infecting the next village downstream.
That's the problem. It works great for their village, but then the very next village is totally hooped.
That's their problem.
Yeah, so you want to be at the headwaters, so you don't.
Well, and I'm going to put a trigger warning here. Historically, the medical officer of health has been an incredibly powerful position, and a lot of what they were dealing with was water and sewage, because you could get your entire city incredibly sick really quickly, and you just have like cholera, whatever waterborne disease you have going on there, and it just grows exponentially. So one of the things that we've talked about, I mean, in terms of upstream, downstream, if you're in a grid down situation, protecting your water source is going to be really important. Set your outhouse. So we all have indoor plumbing. Great. That's not working anymore. We have to dig an outhouse. Dig it well away from your water source, as far as you can. It doesn't matter if it's inconvenient. Dying of dysentery on the Oregon Trail is far more inconvenient than having to walk further to your outhouse.
Well, even the rule around here, so like the code says 100 feet from your septic field to your water well. I even think that's a little tight.
I would agree. I mean, I think that's an issue of properties just aren't big enough to realistically accommodate both.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're dealing with your outhouse, your septic field. If you have dead animals or have to bury your neighbors, look at what's going on in Ukraine. Where are you choosing to do that to keep it well away from your water source, so that there's less crap to filter out, less to disinfect. You think of medieval times when I was a young lad, and they would catapult dead animals over the castle walls to try and introduce disease to the water supplies. So,
or they'd send it back over the walls to King Arthur.
Just on the bash. One of the other things we probably should mention here, we've been talking about filtration and disinfection. That's talking about the biological components. It won't necessarily help with your chemical or radiological issues. Correct me if I'm wrong, but even the most advanced, camping system, home water filtration, the Berkey at the the British Royal Palaces, they can't get out most of the non-biological contaminants. You look at the fuel contamination up in Iqaluit that we were talking about last year. If there's a poisonous substance in there, it's a much smaller molecule that's going through the filter system with the water molecules, rather than realistically, like a biological entity, a bacteria is much, much, much bigger. So that's why it's getting filtered out by those tiny, tiny pores in the coconut husk or whatnot. So there, you have your different. Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
I was gonna say, like, so oil. I haven't tried it because I don't want to ruin the filters because I like them and they're expensive. But yeah, so like you said, the viruses, no problem, and bacteria gets them. As far as chemicals, yes, except for some reason the coconut can get out the chlorine, and that's why they have chlorine add-ons if you have chlorinated water. But I don't know about actual caustic chemicals, whether or not they get those out. I'm assuming they would, but I haven't seen anything good or bad on that.
Well, I don't necessarily know either. But basically, I'm just putting a giant disclaimer. We're talking about getting rid of the biologicals that are causing an infection, something that's going to grow in your gut, make you sick. It propagates by making you have diarrhea to spread to everyone else, versus toxins, poisons that are faster acting. Just to differentiate between the two. So we're not necessarily going to be able to make perfect water, like you said, if you're downstream from someone throwing chemicals into their storm sewer. That won't necessarily help out a whole lot. Jumping back to my earlier points, the water filter that I love for camping is the Platypus Gravity Works filter. They have them at Mountain Equipment Co-op. I'm not sure where else they carry them. That was just the first website I knew I could check to find them. So,
is Mountain Equipment Co-op still in business? I thought they were. I thought they got bought out or something, or they shut down.
I think they got bought out, but I believe they're still up and running. Their website is anyway. So, anyway, it is a sort of an IV gravity fed kind of system, so you can sort of hoist the bag and it does all the work for you, and you don't have to work up a sweat pumping an old school filter. So
cool.
Yeah, that answers one of my questions too, because that's what we're thinking about when we go camping. You've got a lot of water sources at a campground, but not sources you necessarily want to drink. And so that would be handy to set up in a tree and go for it.
Oh, and I mean, it's great because you're not sort of working up a sweat to make water.
Yeah,
it's a whole lot easier to just make a lot of it, and you've got lots of clean water for dishes. You have lots of clean water to fill everyone's Nalgene bottles, and so that's one that I like, and it's part of my. Obviously, all of my camping gear is part of my preps.
What's the price point on something like that?
Currently on the MEC website, the 4-liter kit, it's about $155. So it's not cheap. They're a little bit fragile. It's I want to say carbon nanotubes inside, so you can't let it freeze. It will sort of never dry, so it can't ever freeze once it's been put in service. And you just have to be, they're a little. They don't like to be banged around, so just be gentle with them.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you're selling me more of the Sawyer again.
Apparently,
they're cheap and tough. Actually, they're actually surprisingly resilient. They're like pretty thick plastic, and yeah, they're also be tiny, so that's good. Well, I guess that's it. Podcast shelves time.
Yep. No, thank you very much for sharing all that information with us. I know we had, different thought processes and didn't know where to start. So, like, I know growing up, like, when I went to my cottage, we couldn't drink the water there. So we'd either get water from the spring or bring jugs. So to me, it seems silly to go and buy jugs, because what if in a situation where you can't go and buy anything, right? So what do you do? And learning a little bit more on the survival course that we took with the kids, it was like, oh, well, we could filter our own water, but what filtration systems can we trust? I think a question we had was there any red flag, definite buyer beware situations? I was always told kind of like, Amazon can be a great tool, but at the same time, you don't know necessarily what you're getting. So from what I understood, there was only 2 or 3 major companies that did the really good purification systems. So I can't recall the names of them at the moment, but I do know. So Berkey was one of the brands, but there was like was it called Samson?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was that the gentleman mentioned. So they're like, yeah, if like usually they take this filter and put it into different products, like whether it's a water bottle or something like that. So have you guys come across a product where you were like, no, not at all, don't do it, it's a scam, or it's not good?
So not really so far. I mean, Berkey's kind of they don't just let anybody sell them either. So
Yeah.
I think Eric sells the filters, but I don't think he sells the actual Berkey machines, like the
Okay.
actual buckets. But like Conscious Water, which I think is over in Midland, Ontario, I think they sell it. And so yeah, that's where I think we originally got the Berkey buckets from. But yeah, I mean, generally there's very few scams as far as water purification. It's just not something that people really hunt down regularly. So it's not worth the squeeze for a lot of these scammers to pursue, screw people over on water filtration. So
okay, just curious about it, because I'm sure that Amazon will come up with a product that is like a copyright infringement of some sort of a style. You know what I mean? So as long as it does the job, I don't care. But I'm willing to pay the price for quality.
Just don't buy on Wish.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess it's don't buy the wish.com version. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like Berkey, yeah, you will. God, they're not cheap to start, but I mean, it's a lifetime thing, just like the Rascals, right? Like you'll buy them, you'll never sell it, and because once you use it, you're kind of hooked, and then it's just a matter of the filters don't get changed out that often. So
yeah, okay,
I don't know if Eric sells the whole kit. He used to, and I was going to purchase one, but as you say, they're not cheap, and at that time there was other things that were more important at the time. So I don't know if he maybe does them. If you want one, he'll order one for you. I don't know if he has them in stock or not, actually.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right, Jeff, should we get our podcast challenge?
Sure. So basically, like Ian said way back near the beginning of the show, you really can only go 3 days without water. So a lot of times we ignore water when it's actually pretty significantly important. So revisit your boring water preps. Find or even build or have something that is cheap and easy to work with or to remedy, but usually ignored. So, what do you have? What is your idea for a backup way to purify your water? Revisit it, look at it.
Upcoming events, Josh?
Well, if you go to mapleseedrifleman.com, you can see a list of events that have been posted from Mapleseed. I know I've been getting emails every week or so now with all the recent events coming out. I think there's one actually in our area again. We went to the one in Warren Field here in Ontario. That was an excellent course. Kelly actually was at that one. It was a great time. Lots of instruction. Make sure you bring lots of water.
Prepare for the weather.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Because, everyone said, oh, it's awful when it rains, or, oh, it's awful when it snows. Let me tell you, the scorching heat doesn't help you either. And that is where water was very necessary.
So anybody thinking about learning some marksmanship skills, basically just a 22 at 25 yards, you learn all the basics, and it's a great day of instruction. So take a look at that link.
Cool. RESUL, the Finnish Reserve March, I guess, is being held May 26th to 29th. There's a link in the show notes at resul4daymarch.fi. If you are interested in doing the RESUL March, which basically just amounts to 10-kilometer hikes 4 days in a row as a minimum, join our team, which is called Team Ragnaruck. And it's we came in third, I think, worldwide last year. So did well. So more people on the team, the better.
Yeah, for a civilian team, that was amazing.
That was
Out of
pretty
Canada,
awesome.
yeah.
Well, we had a team too, though, didn't we?
Yeah, 3 people,
We
4
did.
people in it.
3 people. I think
We'll just join Ragnaruck this year.
Sure. Okay.
All right, Jeff, you got one?
Yeah, the annual Preppers Meet is coming up in Desboro, Ontario. First weekend in July, July 7th to 10th. If you want to check it out, the website is in the show notes. It's just www.annualpreppersmeet.com. I believe tickets are on sale now. I think the early tickets went on sale the 1st of May today. So you can pick up some tickets if you're interested. If you want to have a look and see what they've got. I personally haven't been there. I know Eric's been there. I would like to go this year. We'll see what happens. There is a conflict with a couple of the days, but I would like to get out and have a look at it.
Cool. Yeah, we'll see if we can give it a try too. Deal of the week. I found some Magnum, cool name, utility crates, which is like a massive poly ammo can on sale at Cabelas. Flat dark earth color, and they're on for $25 versus $40, and they're good for holding like radio equipment and light ammunition, or anyways, like range tools, toys, everything else. They're just a nice size. They come with a like an SKS crate for SKS ammo, but it's plastic, and it's just a nice size. They're stackable and everything else. So links in the show notes. I guess with that, we're going to bring episode 159 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Please help us out. Submit a review. It helps other people find us. And I forgot to assign that.
I'll do it.
Go for it.
So we record these shows live on Facebook and YouTube. If you want an early peek at the shows, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast, and click the notifications tab. That gives you an alert when we're going live. If you want to contact me, you can just reach me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
That email address also works for me.
Cool.
All right.
Well, ladies and gents, thank you for having us on your show. So just so that everyone knows, we made a mention before that Josh and I are both on a podcast as well. We are amateur podcasters with New Shooter Canada. It is one of the oldest podcasts in Canada. We have 2 experienced shooter panelists along with ourselves to discuss a variety of different topics along in regards to our gun community, and we briefly talk about accessories and tools and skill sets that come in handy come along with it. So we don't record live like you guys do, so this has been a nice change of pace, but we typically have a show up every 2 weeks. So find us at www.newshootercanada.ca. You can also find us on Facebook and on Instagram, or you can email us at host@newshootercanada.ca. So again, thank you very much for having us on. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure to have you. It's been great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you can reach Ian directly by emailing me at theadamretreat@gmail.com. You can also find my Canadian Patriot podcast on iTunes and YouTube. We record Monday evenings at, 8:45 now. Eastern is 8:30. I can't remember anymore. I'm also on the Discord chat for both CPPs. So email us if you want an invite. There you can find us discussing why government waste in society has me fixating on not shitting myself to death. Which is always good. All right. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
And keep learning.